Hello, I'm going to be analyzing some part of A Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens. It's a lovely book, and it's kind of like touches the hearts of December, the time of the year when there's traditionally in the UK a lot of snow, and the families get together around the fire. They eat, they celebrate, they remember the birth of Jesus and the Christian ethos. But it's also a time where there's some mean people about who don't want to share and look after the poor, misers, like Ebenezer Scrooge. And he's a man who came from poor, as his father was jailed, and he had to work in a boot factory, polishing boots, and he got all the boot stain on his fingers. Can you imagine? And he actually had to sleep in the factory, and he wrote letters to his sister, eventually worked himself as an apprentice into a bank, eventually owning the bank, and eventually owning multiple businesses and becoming extremely wealthy. But he lost his humanity, he lost his fiancée, he lost everything. He only thought of himself. So in the end, he fears losing it all, everything that he strived for. Was it worth it in the end? Okay, so let's look at a image of when Scrooge meets one of the ghosts. And here is an extremely scary phantom. Bony, fingerless hands, spiky, furry leather, a hidden face, enormous caricature with a huge chain. And there's Ebenezer Scrooge. He's terrified of the phantom. And why is he so terrified? Why is he so terrified of all ghosts? There's a question that relates to his fears, his insecurities, and his terrors, because initially he didn't believe in ghosts until they took him on journeys to his past and to what he actually did from a child right the way up to the present. And the question relates to a context of, we'll just get it up there, of the ghost yet to come. Okay? And how does Dickens explore Scrooge's fears in A Christmas Carol? So why is he afraid of this ghost yet to come? Is the first part of the question. And move down. How does Dickens present Scrooge's fears in the novel as a whole? Now your question first part should relate to the extract, and it's a good idea to plan your answer. But let's read through it, and as we do so, I shall point out some interesting connotations and figurative techniques that you should note down. Okay, so Scrooge is a fearful man. He comes across as very aggressive, nasty, mean, and a miser, and quite cruel. But in fact, he harbors or hides deep insecurities and deep fears. So this phantom gets hold of him. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. So, in other words, a doomed feeling of terror or dread. And he's going to surprise Scrooge. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee. For in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. So Scrooge is terrified, and he falls down on his knee. And the phantom is so hideous and so death-like that he, in a way, fears that he's about to die. Hence the gloom. But the mystery is the fact that the skeleton, the bony fingers, are moving, and the phantom's carrying an enormous chain. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, black kind of symbolic connotation of death. Garment, can't see it because it's yet to come, so hidden, which concealed its head, its face, its form, repetition, and left nothing of its visible save one outstretched hand. So yes, Scrooge, this is yet to come, but we can't see it yet, hence the hidden aspect. But for this, it would have been difficult to detach alliteration, its figure from the night. In other words, death, evil, perhaps, and a warning to Scrooge if he doesn't change his attitude of what might happen to him and his possessions. And separated from the darkness by which it was surrounded. A lot of emphasis on sibilance, I see, as separate and surrounded is indicated there, as well as scatter. These words start with S. Let's continue our read. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread of his doom. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. It was just beside him. In other words, his shadow of what was to come. And then, I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come, said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onwards with its hand. You are about to show me shadows of things that have not happened, but will happen in time before us, Scrooge pursued. He's very truculent, very arrogant. He's also very fearful. Is that so, spirit? So he's demanding and asking repetitively for the spirit to say so. The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds. In other words, the garment of death, the shroud of death. As if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him. Hence he fell to his knee, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. Yes, I repeat, unless Scrooge was willing to change and did change, he would face dire consequences in his later elderly years and later after he died. The spirit paused a moment, as observing his condition and giving him time to recover. The spirit is willing that Scrooge should change, and in a sense shows some compassion towards Scrooge. But Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him. So his actions can't be hidden. Whatever he's done bad to people will follow him to the end. While he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. So his ultimate doom, gothic appearance, sacrifice, death, was it all worth it in the end, Scrooge? Because in the end every man dies, and their actions will follow them to their death. So Scrooge still has a chance to change, but he needs to be shown what's going to happen to him. And that was probably the impetus in which he can change. Ghost of the future, he exclaimed, I fear you more than any scepter I have seen. But I know your purpose is to do me good. So Scrooge finally realizes, yes, this phantom is trying to help him. And as I hope, so there's a bit of an emotive language there, the context of gratitude. And as I hope to live, to be in another man for what I was, I am prepared to bear your company and to do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? So Scrooge is very grateful to this ghost of Christmas yet to come, who's showing him the errors of his ways and the chance, and he decides he will change, a remedy for his bad ways, and he's going to change to a better man. And he's going to help the poor. He's going to help the family of Tiny Tim. He's going to go out and help the old lady who pulls at his coat. Someone begs for food or money, he's going to give. He's going to be a nice person in his later years, so that when he does die, he'll be remembered with gratitude as a wonderful man rather than an evil miser. And he doesn't surely want to look like the phantom is. So the phantom is like an image of what he doesn't want to finally look like in death. Okay. Let's move on to some other examiners' interpretations and suggestions. Scrooge is very fearful of the appearance of the phantom, and his response to it is matched. Scrooge's fear of the phantom represents what he fears this ghost might be in terms of himself when he dies, and he fears this phantom the most. It's a reflection of what he will be looking like when he dies. Scrooge fears all ghosts, and indeed Marley's ghost too, but he fears the phantom the most. He fears an early and lonely death, and whom he's going to leave all his wealth and possessions to, because he lost his fiancée. He's on his own. And the coldness and darkness of the grave he fears so much. He fears becoming poor. His whole aspect of life is making money, which is such a shame, and it's such a shallow existence. The phantom fills him with solemn dread, if you like, and builds up its fears. And he remembers Marley's ghost and how he treated Marley and how he treated others. And he needs to be re-educated to become a better person spiritually, and the way he acts, of course, in his heart. And he must be genuine towards others in the way he acts. Scrooge's fears help him redeem himself, if you like, before he dies. And indeed, the book goes on to how generous Scrooge then becomes. And Dickens is trying to show us that, in this context, dramatically, that a bad person can change to a good person if given the chance. But some bad people need to be shown the errors of their ways first, and sometimes in extreme ways, before they do change. But thankfully, Ebenezer Scrooge, does change to a man, to a gentleman, whom everybody respects. And he's very much appreciated in the end, if you like. And he's a man who's respected, and he ends up dying and remembered, if you like. So instead of mourning a miser, people mourn and respect a good man. And in that context, I hope you enjoy the rest of Christmas Carol, and I hope you enjoyed it so far. And remember the meaning of Christmas Carol, and remember the context in which Dickens wrote it. At that time, there were a lot of poor people, and in the context of Christmas, the wealthy tended to help the poor, but there were some nasty people who refused to help the poor and just thought of themselves. And I wish you all the best, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Christmas Carol, and take care. Goodbye.